Sure. I'm Reginaldo Haslett-Marroquin. I'm with the Regenerative Agriculture Alliance. We're based out of North Hill, Minnesota, and we work in what we call the Poultry-Centered Regenerative Agroforestry System or production model. And we are the organization that provides the backbone infrastructure so that farmers, aggregator, distribution, and customers can have the proper support systems and infrastructure from curriculum, training, assistance, technical and otherwise, to accomplish this goal and scale up the system. And I oversee the innovations and the research and development and the main demonstration and training farm.
So tell me a little bit about what that means. Like, what is the goal there in having all of these different elements? Tell me about the vision of what you would like to see the poultry system at least be.
So the first step for us was to properly codify what would be the best potential expression of poultry. And for that, and in other words, we understand regeneration and regenerative systems as the optimization of the geoevolutionary blueprint of each species and or each living system, and then from there the ecosystem. And so for us, it's critical that if we're going to work with livestock, that we seek to mimic that livestock's ancestral evolutionary blueprint, habitat, environment, interactions, and otherwise. Now, poultry, of course, is not it's a jungle fowl and is native to Southeast Asia. So there are birds everywhere on the planet, but not chickens per se. So when we brought chickens into this Midwest, upper Midwest environment, our first critical step was to understand what would it look like if we were to optimize the welfare of the chicken in this specific environment. For egg layers is one pathway. Turkey is a separate pathway because they are native to these ecosystems in North America. And for meat broilers is a completely different pathway because they are not only non-native, they are not adapted to these ecosystems, but they don't tolerate cold weather and they don't range very well. And so that presented a whole new set of challenges. So from the production model, and remember that the production model on the farm and the farms themselves isn't what the system definition is. So for us, first was what is regeneration and what is regenerative? Well, regenerative agriculture is simply a set of principles that allows us to define how we live, how we express ourselves, how we learn, from where and from whom do we learn, the engagement of our innate intelligence, and the knowledge, wisdom, and data and information, which is what the educational system does, acquired, all brought together to feed and to deploy and optimize our own capacity, which is, in our case, we call it the indigenous intellect. When we accomplish those things, then we start regenerating because then we see everything, all life on the planet from a very different perspective. And that different perspective is the original perspective, which is when we are able to identify ourselves also as indigenous organisms, indigenous creatures to the earth itself. And when that happens, we decolonize the mind, and as we decolonize the mind, we can see the other 99% of possibilities that extractive systems simply cannot engage because they are not designed for that. And as we do that, then we're able to build the infrastructure that can deliver those regenerative outcomes, as we say. In that context, we sought to restore poultry to its ancestral jungle-like habitat. But we had to do it as a beginning point here in Minnesota. And so, in order to do that, we sought the help from the wiser creatures around here, the hazelnuts, the hawks, the eagles, the big woods trees, and understand from their perspective how would they welcome the chicken and provide them with a jungle-like habitat so that the chicken could, even though it's an immigrant and even though it's a species foreign to this ecology, will still find, to the extent that was possible, a way to contribute to these local ecosystems and benefit from those local ecosystems. In that context is that we built the agronomics, the blueprints for production units, the amount of birds we put per flock, the way we manage paddock systems, rotations, shelters, everything. So from that, we built what we call the Poultry-Centered Regenerative Agroforestry system, because again, it's agroforestry because it's chickens in the jungle. And then from there, we built the economic infrastructure on which we then built the farm units, which is the enterprise unit beyond the production unit, which is the smallest component of that economic ecosystem. And then from the farm unit, we built the blueprint for the region, which is the aggregation of farms in their production so that we can then justify the deployment of the next stage, which is the business ecosystem. And the business ecosystem is the sectors of enterprises that have to be vibrant and coordinated and interdependent in order to make the actual poultry center regenerative agroforestry system, not just the production model at the farm, but the system, meaning everything from finance to management, curriculum, training, processing, branding, marketing, distribution. I mean, you go on and then grain supply, grain production. How do you grain? How do you grow that grain so that the poultry outcome has integrity as far as nutritional, as far as the story across the landscape and the farmers and the landscape themselves. All of that is what the system is, not how we produce the chicken. From that perspective, is that we can now step forward, step away and say, okay, my organization or our organization, the Regenerative Agriculture Alliance, oversees the integration of the landscape ecosystem, which is all life on the landscape, and the business ecosystem, which is beyond the farm gate infrastructure, both institutional and physical, so that we may then close the circles necessary for wealth to flow as opposed to being extracted, from life to thrive as opposed to being manipulated, and from ecosystems to interact and become interdependent so we may build resiliency so that we can then defend and expand this new way of thinking, of knowing, of relating, and living, which we call regenerative. That is what we do, and that's how we go about it.
I feel like I have to listen to that like 15 times to really absorb everything that you're saying. And I wonder how you address it with consumers who are maybe, looking for some chicken. And they want to maybe do the best thing. But how is that presentation? I mean, is there an easy way of saying all of that? Is there a kind of an analogy that you can use with people to have them get it in a much easier sense than,
Oh no, we are not like some people already understand it. We don't have to explain it. Most people don't understand it, don't want to understand it, don't care to understand it. We got no business explaining that. You are asking me as to what we do. That's what we do. What we market, that's not what we market. We communicate what I just said. We don't market that. The chicken is just chicken out there in the store. Now, of course, it's got a great story, and we don't actually bring that to consumers. For us, there is no consumers. There is only people who are hungry and who want to nourish their minds and their bodies first, but then second, their minds, and third, their spirits. And a we provide an output from the land that does all three. And it just happens to be in the form of chicken. And so when you come into this space and you go into one of the stores where the chicken from our ecosystem is being delivered to that person, our goal is not is to remove them from their consumption patterns and to give them an experience that is so wholesome that they reconnect with the real purpose of buying food at the store, which is to nourish. We nourish them. And as a result, they are participating in a process as opposed to consuming. For consumption is the path to self-destruction and degeneration. And so that can be explained in a simple word. Best chicken raised under the trees. Would you like one?
Yeah. Um, so talk about what was your background? Was it in a different form? Like were you producing chickens in an industrial manner or how did you come to all of this?
No, I don't come from a lot of the traditional, folks in this space. I mean, a lot of them actually, if you look at their history, they came from the realization that they were destroying the name, that they're destroying the planet, whether it was killing elephants in Africa and realizing they felt shitty about it, or destroying the land in the Midwest and realizing it never gave him any reward or purpose, and then out of that having an epiphany and becoming what they're called regenerators or regenerative leaders or whatever. I mean, we all have a right to change our minds and we all deserve a second chance, and we should, whenever we do the right thing, we should be praised and so on. But I come from the space where generation after generation in our communities we have been even killed because of standing for regenerative systems for tens of thousands of years. We have been colonized, we have been stripped out of our knowledge, out of our books, out of our systems, out of our information, and all of that is being appropriated, uh, whitewashed, co-opted, and turned into profit-making systems and branding and all kinds of things. I come from the space where we have, for generations, protected that wisdom and knowledge. And so I have never being part of the destructive system as a pathway to get here. I was born in this space. I was raised this way, and this is the only lifestyle and the only way of living that I know.
What do you see though, I guess, that you are challenging? Like what is the status quo system that you see in poultry? How would you describe it here in the Midwest in
Oh,
particular?
well, it's no different than any other industrial extractive system. It's is intended to shift all the risks onto those who operate the land, the farmers. And if you look at the industrial overall complex, it captures 80% or more of the value of what leaves the farm gate and then trickles as little as possible. And when it's pushed, maybe 20%, 30% of the value of that output to the farmer. And then the system has created infrastructure to ensure that institutionalize, build policies, and build the structures and systems to defend and protect the right to extract and exploit the farmer. And so it's legal to do it, even though it is degenerative to the nth degree. It was codified to be legal. It should be legal, but it isn't, because we built the systems to protect it. That is no different, and in fact, is even more aggressive and egregious in the poultry sector. And so we are under no illusion that what we do is is not going to encounter the same exact challenges as anything on the planet where people have tried to replace the system of extraction, exploitation, colonization, and degeneration of the planet, the living systems on it, the health of consumers or the health of those who seek to buy food to nourish themselves, and the health the economic health of rural communities and the farmers who farm the land is no different. And this is something that we understand thoroughly, systemically, and we are trying to solve for in a way that doesn't confront, is not against anything, but it is about building what may potentially, if we all get together and we all agree that we want to replace the current system, that at least when we decide to collectively do that, that we will have a blueprint and we'll have blueprints for doing that. Our best hope and vision is that we will grow enough and we'll build enough of a movement that we will actively keep realizing that we need to replace the system and that we keep continuously building the systems that we need to replace it. But we will never change the current system from within. It will change until we build what replaces it. And it may, and I mean the system, not the people, not even the poultry processing facilities or any of that. The mechanical aspect of things isn't bad. I mean, it's just transactions and stuff. It's the ownership and control and the governance that went awry. And now decisions are being made for the wrong end purpose. And so I want us to set up a system where the ownership, control, and governance, and I want us to all work towards that goal where that process delivers a system intended to actually nourish us and to redevelop the infrastructure necessary to regain the resiliency that we once had before the current system took over. And so I believe that there is a great opportunity, even for those in the conventional system right now, to reinvest and to become part of this new system. But if they expect it to be under the same rules and structures, then all we're gonna do is repeat the same mistakes under a different name. And unfortunately, the whitewashed versions of what we call regenerative, quote unquote regenerative, is doing just that. And so, you know, I'm not saying we're here to fight that or anything like that. It's simply stating that in order for us to succeed, we got to know those things. We have to understand that it is always been there and it will always be there, all the way as far as you can go in the history of human beings. Somebody has always appropriated somebody else's successes, capture them, and put them in a different set of rules and systems and governance and ownership so that they can exploit them. I don't think we are at a point in humanity's historical evolution where trying to change that is actually realistic. But we may actually realize that unless we do something different, fundamentally different, we actually don't have that much time left on this planet. And maybe that will allow us to reach that higher level of intellectual, spiritual, and physical existence, which also it just happens to be way more rewarding. And that is the actual path to true happiness and wealth. And we may just realize that because I believe that we are all collectively way more intelligent than the way we are expressing ourselves on the planet right now.
Clearly. Oh, and I guess I wanted to mention too that my husband and I also we raise grass-finished beef and we work with 99 counties, and so we're kind of part of that with you and Wendy Johnson and few people, very few people who are part of that. I just wanted to make that part clear is that we also farm. Um, so I guess I wonder about if you could talk about like the plant in Iowa and do you see this as providing different kinds of opportunities to Iowa farmers?
Yes, let's make it clear first. We deploy that facility to support the poultry-centered regenerative agroforestry system and any farmer who chooses to join this system. The reason is because in order for us to market products that will consistently be differentiated and gain any competitive advantage in the marketplace, and for us to deploy a production model that actually has the resilience, economic, social, and ecological, we first have to standardize and then we have to organize. You can't organize without standardization because organizing without production models, standards, it only organizes people but doesn't organize the economics and the aggregation of actual production. And so that is the first thing we got to make clear. Second, because we are our the PCRA, as we call it, Poultry-Centered Regenerative Agroforestry, hasn't yet reached a level where it can support a facility, processing facility. Then we bought with the intention of supporting other farmers that are not necessarily part of the PCRA. We bought the poultry processing facility in Stacyville in 2020. Then we revamped it and relaunched it. Now, today we process chickens for over 100 farmers who are not part of the PCRA. Only 12 of us are part of the PCRA. And yet, when you look at the total processing capacity of the plant, those 100 plus farmers produce less than 40% of the total throughput of the plant. The plant will not exist if we didn't have the PCRA. That is a fundamental economic, social factor to understand. If you build a plant, and others have done this, with the idea that if you build it, the farmers will come, you will be belly up very soon. All of them are, or are scrambling and continue to scramble and will continue to struggle, and there is no pathway to success there. Now, on the other hand, this is why the industrial system created vertically integrated systems because fundamentally there is no money to be made in processing chickens unless you reach the levels of Tyson and so on. That's why they keep working on that. And that is something we have to intellectually understand because if we don't, we get this idea that if I set up a poultry processing facility, I'll go and make money and make a living of it. There is no such a scenario. And unfortunately, everybody seems to want to go through the punishment before they realize that. I'm not being disrespectful here. I'm just being factual. We did the numbers. Once we came up to the conclusion that we needed to process a minimum of 250,000 chickens in that plant for it to even break even, and break even not even very efficiently. I mean, break even because we can fetch a significant premium on our products, but not because we will be efficient or anything close to it at 250,000 chickens a year. And so when we realized that, we also realized that in order for the plant to operate in a dignified way, meaning workers weren't going to be abused in order to make it work, that, and it's still painful and difficult for the manager there. It's not easy work. But at least they're being paid more than, or at least around twice as much as they would have been paid if they were working at a regular small poultry processing facility somewhere else. And I don't know what others are earning in those processing facilities, but when we built the plant, the previous processor that processed for us, the manager was earning just around half of what the manager earns at our poultry processing facility. But it's still not a good living. So you can see where the economics are here. On the other hand, we knew that since there is really no profit, because after we reach 250,000, we have to continue to grow in order to keep building efficiencies, not for the purpose of making money, but for the purpose of making our product more competitive in the marketplace, the chicken. in the marketplace. The plant itself is never going to make money. If there is ever better margins, operating margins, we will put those back into improving the conditions of everybody who works there, as opposed to thinking that there is profits. That is the way to approach poultry processing. So we, because of that, instead of trying to set it up out there privately or otherwise, we set it under the nonprofit organization. The nonprofit owns and manages the plant, but is managed under a separate entity called Regenerative Poultry Processing. And so, Regenerative Foods Processing, I'm sorry. So, RFP is the LLC, independent, disregarded entity, meaning it's under the full control of the nonprofit, is the one that operates the plant. So, it still operates 100% of as a business, is managed, monitored, evaluated, and set up to operate as a business, but it has a governing system that ensures that in the name of profit and in the name of making it, processing chickens cheaper, nobody will be abused or nobody's standards will be undermined as a result of that incredible pressure that we are all under to process chickens less expensive. That locking those social standards down through the structure of the actual managing institution and the management entity, it was critical before going out there and starting a processing facility. So your question about the farmers, for as long as we don't have the plant filled with PCRA farm production, it will continue to serve other farmers. But whenever a new farmer joins the Poultry-Centered Regenerative Agroforestry, they have top priority because the idea is to support the development of a new system, not just to support farms out there. Now, we may end up managing this in a way so that we will always be supporting those farmers out there. But it is critical to never, misinform folks out there as to what are the expectations. And so, as we develop this plant further, maybe there is a potential where all of these farmers who don't want to be part of the PCRA, but still want to have access to the plant, may want to contribute as well, so that we may have this plant be collectively owned even. We are open to any kind of strategic advice and investments from that perspective, but we have to make it clear as to the business purpose, the financial and operating infrastructure that has to be in place, and the ultimate goals, so that a farmer who comes out and says, okay, I only want to raise 500 chickens. I am not interested in being part of the PCRA and marketing under your brand. And I don't care to follow those protocols, but I want to have access to a processing facility, that they will understand that it takes a lot of effort. And if they don't contribute to that effort, they also have no right, socially, moral right to expect benefits from it. Those are fundamental, core baseline business principles on which we must operate. And that is what our plant is. It's not just a processing facility for chickens. It's a place where we get to, one, understand how this actually works at a thorough level of detail. So monitoring the plant cost and everything, cost accounting is critical for us, because that data then allows us to inform how we make the next decision. And of course, our spirit is with everybody having access to a plant. Unfortunately, the economics don't support that. The social preferences of farmers don't support collective infrastructure. That independence, that go alone mentality is really damaging to our ability to systematize the processes by which we build wealth and by which we reinvest it in infrastructure like this that can actually provide the solution. So it's a you know what I'm going to say is the chicken and the egg situation here, because for us to collectively own and improve those facilities so that everybody has access to them, we must first organize and come together and agree. on what we're going to do. And fortunately for us, if we're going to sell chicken, it's better to do it under a systematized, standardized process as opposed to on our own raising chickens under any method we want and then having to go out there and try to explain that to a customer who has a chicken out in the store that is one third or one fourth the price you're asking them to pay for your chicken, yet you got no story, no systems, no backing, no verification, none of that behind your chicken. And so for us, it's like, why would I want to do that to begin with? And that's why we didn't. That's why we are working the way we are.
So, I think I have 10 more minutes. So, okay, I have two, I guess I have two questions. So here in the Midwest, especially here in Iowa, you can see just, field after field, corn, beans, corn, beans. It's a system that is obviously gaining a lot of attention now for the difficulties the system is bringing for farmers and how are we going to support it federally, and that's kind of an aside. But I guess my question really is how what is the importance for us to grow food well? I mean, especially like if I'm living in a city and I'm busy. I don't have a lot of time to put into thinking about all of this. Um, I guess it's just a question of, and you've answered it. I realize that I'm asking you to kind of repeat and succinctly maybe um, condense, but I guess it's just sort of like, how, what is the importance for this change in the Midwest right now? And why do you see it as so important that you spend your life on this mission? Um, Tell me a little bit about that. Why is it so important to grow food well and grow food regeneratively in these ways you're discussing?
There's no way to succinctly put it, but let me try my best. When we are born indigenous to the earth, made of her elements, and so on. That is an identity we are born with. But we are also creatures, living systems of the living, we're part of a living system. We're creatures of the earth. We're part of living systems. And we are also born to defend and protect ourselves, to survive and to perpetuate our species, as others have said in the past. And so, with those two identities, we then grow up to become this person, this individual, this ecosystem walking around, right? But we are still an image of the planet. To the extent that the planet is sick, we are sick. To the extent that we participate in making the planet sicker, we get sicker. And you can go to any database on the world right now, whether it's the World Health Organization, whether it's is the national health systems in the US, health insurance, whatever you want to go. And what you will find is extreme levels of depression, heart related, food related diseases, diabetes, heart disease, all kinds of other problems. And then we have lately started to reckon with the mental degeneration of a lot more people, more depression, more suicide, more of this sense of hopelessness that is kind of at epidemic levels in our youth today. All of it, all of it is a reflection of how we live. And all of it has a direct correlation to what we put in our bodies and where it comes from. So if anybody has any doubt when they get up in the morning on how their day can be the most optimal and the best for them, go to what you eat. If that food has no nourishment, if that food comes from conventional, nourish deprived systems, if that system comes with exploitation of people and abuse of farmers and animals and all of that, it lacks spiritual value. And you will pay the bill for that through your body, your mind, and your spirit. For at the end of the day, you will go back to the earth where you belong because you are made of her elements. And to the extent that you do not regenerate those elements in your body with integrity, which is done through the food, we will continue to in this path to self-destruction. That's why this is critical. That's why some of us will never question it, will never stop, will never relent, will never retreat, because it is our ultimate expression and our ultimate purpose for why we exist in the first place, to do all those things that we already know we were sent here to do. When we lose that, then we wander the world with no purpose and no mission. And that is is the path to that self-destructive path that outcome that we have so drastically increased. So food is the foundation. That food integrity, nutritional integrity is critical. That nutritional integrity is the ecological integrity, comes from the ecological integrity, the integrity of the soils and the microorganisms, and all of the living systems that make it possible.
Well, I have 2 minutes left. So, let's see. Is there anything I haven't asked about that I should know?
Well, we either do this or we will continue on this path we are. And just like water, now we have to buy it because it's no longer drinkable. Food, we now have to buy it because we no longer produce it and control it in our communities. Air, there will be a point when we will have to buy air, and on it will keep going unless we make a stand and we restore those systems so that we may have free access to those things the planet gifted us with. It will get capitalized, it will get turned into extraction, and it will become another story of corn and soybeans controlled and owned by a few and managed and implemented by thousands and thousands of farmers who no longer have a choice. Not having a choice, I think, is the most detrimental thing we can do to ourselves. So, again, we know how it works, both ends. We know how to be extractive, colonizers, and we also know how to be indigenous. Both codes are written in us. It's time for us to choose.